Captain Jack rubbed his tired eyes as he stared at the endless black void through the main view screen of the patrol ship Wanderer. 6 weeks into their deep space patrol route, and nothing to show for it but empty reports and dwindling crew morale. "Status update," he asked, not expecting anything new. Lieutenant Ben looked up from his console. "All systems normal, sir. Nothing on scanners except the usual space dust." Jack nodded and was about to suggest they change course when the ship's sensors began to beep. Everyone on the bridge snapped to attention. "Sir, we've got something," Ben called out, his fingers dancing across the controls. "About 500,000 km to starboard." "It's big, visual," Jack ordered, and the main screen shifted to show a distant object floating against the backdrop of stars. As they drew closer, the shape became clearer. It was a ship, or what remained of one. The vessel was clearly ancient, its hull pockmarked with impact craters and torn open in several places. Strange angular protrusions jutted out from a central body that must have been at least twice the size of their own ship. "Any life signs?" Jack asked. "None, sir," replied Ben. "That thing looks dead as a doorknob been floating out here for. Well, the radiation decay suggests thousands of years at least." Tom, the ship's chief engineer, stepped onto the bridge, his eyes widening at the sight on the screen. "What in the world is that? Some kind of derelict?" "Alien design," Jack replied, "nothing like I've seen before." Tom moved closer to the screen, studying the strange vessel with growing interest. "Those hull plates, they're not like anything in our database, and look at those power conduit remnants. They're still intact after who knows how long in deep space." "Just looks like space junk to me," said Security Officer Maria, shrugging. "Fancy space junk, but junk nonetheless." Tom shook his head. "No, there's something special here, Captain. I'd like permission to take a closer look." Jack hesitated. Fleet protocol was clear on encountering unknown alien technology, report, mark, and continue patrol. No unnecessary contact, but they were also tasked with gathering intelligence on new technologies. And this ship was clearly from a civilization they'd never encountered before. "Suit up," he said finally. "We'll take a shuttle over, Ben, you have the bridge." 2 hours later, Jack floated through the cavernous interior of the alien vessel, his magnetic boots occasionally clanking against metal as he found secure footing. Tom followed close behind, his suit lights illuminating the darkness. "This is incredible," Tom's voice crackled over the comm. "The metal composition is like nothing I've ever seen. It's some kind of alloy with self-repairing properties. Look here." He pointed to a section of hull where a jagged tear seemed to be growing smaller, the edges slowly creeping toward each other. "It's still active?" Jack asked, alarmed. "Not the ship itself," Tom replied. "Just the metal. It must react to energy at the atomic level. Even after all this time, it's still trying to fix itself." They moved deeper into the ship, documenting everything with their suit cameras. The interior architecture was strange, angles that seemed wrong somehow, corridors that curved in ways that didn't make sense. "Whatever built this wasn't human," Jack muttered. "Not even close." In what appeared to be the ship's control center, they found data crystals, translucent geometric objects embedded in consoles. Tom carefully extracted one, storing it in a containment case. "With these, we might be able to learn who built this thing and what happened to them," he said. As they were preparing to leave, Jack's light fell on something that made him freeze. A mural etched into the wall of the command center showed a terrifying scene. Thousands of ships that looked like this one engaged in battle with what appeared to be a swarm of organic-looking vessels. The alien ships were being overwhelmed, breaking apart under the onslaught. "I think we know what happened to them," Jack said quietly. Back aboard the Wanderer, the crew gathered to discuss their findings. "It's military," Jack told them, showing the images from their expedition. "A warship from some ancient conflict, and from the looks of that mural they lost." "So what do we do with it?" Maria asked. "Protocol says we mark it and move on." Tom stepped forward, a determined look on his face. "We take it with us." The suggestion was met with silence, then a burst of objections. "Are you crazy?" Maria exclaimed. "That thing is alien tech, possibly dangerous." "It's also the find of the century," Tom argued. "The alloys alone could revolutionize our shipbuilding. And if there's data about whatever enemy destroyed them, an enemy that might still be out there, don't we want to know about it?" Jack considered the options. Tom was right. The potential benefits were enormous, but so were the risks. "We'll tow it to Outpost 7, he decided finally. It's the nearest research facility, and it's isolated enough that if there are any complications, damage will be minimized. Maria still looked unhappy, but she nodded. I'll log it as a salvage operation, less red tape that way. Good, Jack said, let's get it done. 3 days later, the Wanderer approached Outpost 7, the massive alien wreck trailing behind them in a tractor beam. The outpost was built into an asteroid, a collection of habitation domes and research facilities far from the main shipping lanes. Commander Fisher, the outpost leader, was less than pleased when they explained what they'd brought. Captain, you're asking me to store an unknown alien warship at my station, she said, frowning at the video feed. Do you have any idea how many regulations that breaks? I do, Jack replied calmly. I also know that Section 7 of the Fleet Charter allows for retrieval of technology with significant strategic value. This qualifies. Fisher sighed, fine, dock at Bay 3, but this is your responsibility, Captain. Whatever happens with that thing, it's on you. Understood, Jack said, and thank you. As they maneuvered the ancient vessel into the outpost's largest maintenance bay, none of them noticed the small, organic-looking probe that detached itself from the alien hull and drifted away into space. The probe oriented itself, sent a brief transmission toward a distant point in space, then self-destructed in a tiny flash of light. Thousands of light-years away, something stirred in the darkness, something that had been waiting for a very long time. Come look at this, Tom called to Jack as they secured the derelict in the bay. He was examining a section of hull with unusual markings. I think these might be identifiers. Jack leaned closer. The symbols were etched deeply into the metal, a series of angular characters. Vengeance of the Fallen, Jack wondered. Tom nodded, I think so, and maybe a promise. As they worked, neither man noticed the station's long-range sensors briefly registering a small energy spike, too weak and too fast to trigger any alarms. But out in the darkness of space, a signal was traveling, carrying news that would soon change everything. The scrap metal had found a new home, and its story was just beginning. 2 weeks had passed since the Wanderer crew brought the alien vessel to Outpost 7. The initial excitement had given way to frustration as the research team struggled to understand the strange technology. Tom stood in the center of the main hangar, surrounded by scattered pieces of alien metal and equipment. Holographic diagrams floated in the air around him, showing cross-sections of the ship's systems. His eyes were red from lack of sleep, but they still burned with determination. Anything new? Captain Jack asked as he entered the hangar, carrying 2 cups of coffee. Tom accepted one gratefully. Yes and no, the metal is unlike anything we've seen before. It's not just durable, it's adaptive. Watch this. He picked up a small piece of the alien hull and placed it under a testing device. A laser beam hit the metal, and for a moment the surface glowed red. Then, remarkably, the metal began to change, tiny structures reorganizing themselves to better resist the heat. It learns, Tom said, excitement in his voice. Every time we test it, it adapts to better withstand whatever we throw at it. Jack whistled. That would make one hell of a defense system. That's just the beginning, Tom replied, leading him deeper into the hangar. Those data crystals we found, Lisa from the tech team managed to extract some information from them. Lisa, a quiet woman with intense focus, looked up from her workstation as they approached. Her fingers were flying over multiple keyboards, translating alien data into human-readable format. Captain, she nodded, we've got something you need to see. She brought up a series of images on the main screen. They showed massive space battles, thousands of ships like their derelict fighting against strange organic-looking vessels that seemed to flow and change shape rather than move mechanically. The ship belonged to a species called the Ardani, Lisa explained. They were a highly advanced civilization that existed about 15,000 years ago. These records tell the story of their war against something they called the Swarm. The screen shifted to show horrifying images of worlds being consumed. Planets transformed into barren wastelands covered in strange, pulsing structures. The Swarm is some kind of hive-mind entity that assimilates technology and biology to grow stronger, she continued. The Ardani fought them for centuries but were eventually overwhelmed. This ship was part of their last line of defense. Jack stared at the images, a cold feeling growing in his stomach. And where is this Swarm now? Lisa hesitated before answering. The data suggests they went dormant after defeating the Ardani. Maybe they ran out of things to consume in this part of space, but the last entries warned that they would eventually return. When, Jack asked. They didn't know, Lisa replied. But there's something else. The final entries mentioned that the swarm seemed particularly interested in a small yellow star with a developing planetary system. The coordinates match our solar system, Captain. Silence fell over the room as the implications sank in. We need to report this to Earth Command immediately, Jack said finally. 3 days later, Jack slammed his fist on the table in frustration. The holographic face of Admiral Wilson remained unmoved. I understand your concern, Captain, the Admiral said. But we need more than ancient alien warnings to mobilize the fleet. We're dealing with border skirmishes in 3 sectors. I can't divert resources based on a potential threat that may or may not materialize. Admiral, with all due respect, the evidence is clear, Jack argued. The Ardani were far more advanced than us and they were wiped out, if the swarm comes back. If, Captain, that's the key word, your report will be filed and studied. In the meantime, continue your research on the alien materials. That at least may yield practical benefits. Wilson out. The Admiral's image disappeared, leaving Jack staring at empty space. They're not going to help, are they? Tom asked from the doorway. Jack shook his head. Not until they see the swarm with their own eyes. By then, it might be too late. Mike, the station's military advisor who had been quietly listening, stepped forward. Then we do it ourselves. Both men turned to look at him. What do you mean? Jack asked. Mike was a former fleet tactical officer, reassigned to Outpost 7 after disagreeing with command's strategic decisions one too many times. His eyes had the hard look of someone who had seen combat. That ship out there isn't just scrap metal, he said. It's a weapon one designed specifically to fight the swarm, and we've got the blueprints. Tom's eyes widened as he caught on. You're suggesting we rebuild it. Not rebuild, Mike corrected. Improve. The Ardani had amazing technology, but they lacked human adaptability. We think differently, solve problems differently. We might be able to create something they couldn't. Jack frowned. What you're suggesting breaks about a dozen regulations. Only if Command finds out, Mike replied. We'll list it as a research project studying alien technology integration. Technically true. Jack considered the idea. It was risky, potentially career-ending if it went wrong, but if the swarm was really coming. What would we need? He asked finally. Over the next month, Outpost 7 transformed. What had begun as a research project became something more, a secret mission to create Earth's first line of defense against an enemy no one believed was coming. The maintenance bay became a shipyard. Engineers and technicians worked around the clock, rebuilding the alien vessel using a combination of recovered systems and human technology. Word spread quietly through the station, and more personnel volunteered to help, often during their off hours. Tom led the engineering team, adapting human power systems to work with the alien technology. Lisa continued extracting data from the crystals, learning more about the swarm's weaknesses. Mike designed weapon systems based on both human and Ardani principles. The Ardani weapons were powerful but inflexible, he explained to Jack as they examined holographic schematics. They worked on the principle of overwhelming force, hit hard enough and fast enough that the swarm couldn't adapt. And when the swarm did adapt, Jack asked. Game over, Mike replied grimly. But we're taking a different approach, variable frequency weapons, modulation patterns that change constantly, never present the same attack profile twice. Jack nodded impressed, and the hull. That's where things get interesting, Tom joined in. We've figured out how to activate the metal's self-repair properties. The more energy it absorbs, the stronger it gets. In theory, it could withstand attacks that would vaporize our strongest battleships. Progress was swift but not without setbacks. 2 engineers were injured when an alien power conduit unexpectedly activated. A test of the weapon system blew out half the station's power grid. Commander Fisher grew increasingly suspicious of their research project, but seeing the dedication of the crew, chose to look the other way. 1 month turned into 2, then 3. The ship began to take shape. No longer simply an alien derelict, but something new, a hybrid of ancient wisdom and human ingenuity. What will we call it? Lisa asked one evening as the team took a rare break looking at their creation. Jack thought of the original name etched in the hull, Vengeance of the Fallen, and the civilization that had been lost. Phoenix, he said finally, because it's rising from the ashes. As they admired their work, none of them noticed the station's long-range sensors picking up an anomaly at the edge of the system, a small distortion in space, moving slowly but deliberately toward Outpost 7. The first scout of the swarm had arrived. The alarm blared through Outpost 7, jolting Jack from a rare moment of sleep. He grabbed his uniform and raced to the command center, where Commander Fisher was already coordinating the station's response. "What's happening?" Jack asked, still fastening his jacket. Fisher pointed to the main screen. Long-range sensors picked up an unknown object entering the system. It's small, about the size of a shuttle, but it's not responding to hails, and its movement patterns are unusual. The screen showed a blip moving in a zigzag pattern, occasionally stopping completely before darting forward again. Nothing like the predictable trajectories of human or known alien vessels. "Where is it headed?" Jack asked, though he already suspected the answer. "Here," Fisher said grimly, "ETA 4 hours at current speed." Jack exchanged a look with Tom, who had just arrived. They were both thinking the same thing, the swarm. "I need to show you something, Commander," Jack said, "something we've been working on." Commander Fisher stood in stunned silence as she took in the sight of the Phoenix. What had once been alien scrap was now a sleek, dangerous-looking vessel. The hull gleamed with a dull metallic sheen that seemed to shift colors as you looked at it. Weapon ports dotted its surface, and a powerful engine assembly hummed at the rear. "You built this?" she asked, turning to Jack. "Without authorization." "Technically, we were authorized to study alien technology integration," Jack replied. "We just took it further than expected." Fisher shook her head. "I should report all of you." "You can," Jack agreed. "After we deal with our visitor. Commander, we believe it's a scout for the swarm, the same entity that wiped out the Ardani." He quickly explained what they had learned from the data crystals. Fisher listened, her expression growing more concerned with each passing minute. "Why didn't you bring this to me earlier?" she demanded. "We tried to warn Earth Command," Jack explained. "They dismissed it as speculative. We knew we needed more than warnings, we needed a solution." Fisher walked around the Phoenix, examining it with a critical eye. "And this is your solution, one ship against a force that destroyed an entire civilization." "It's a start," Tom said. "The Phoenix combines the best of Ardani technology with human innovation. It's designed specifically to counter the swarm's adaptability." Fisher was silent for a long moment, weighing her options. Finally, she nodded. "Prepare it for launch," she ordered. "If that thing out there is what you think it is, I want it dealt with before it can report back." The next 3 hours were a flurry of activity. The final systems were brought online, weapons were charged, and the crew was selected. Jack would command, with Tom handling engineering, Lisa managing the alien systems, and Mike coordinating weapons. As they worked, Lisa continued analyzing the incoming object. "It's definitely not one of ours," she reported. "Energy signature doesn't match anything in our database, but it does share some similarities with what the Ardani records describe as swarm scout vessels." "What would a scout do?" Fisher asked. "Gather information," Mike answered. "Assess potential threats and resources, then report back to the main hive." "Which is why we can't let it leave," Jack added. The Phoenix was ready just as the scout entered visual range. On the screen, they could see it clearly for the first time, a disturbing blend of organic and mechanical parts, like a metal insect with too many limbs. Its surface pulsed with an internal light, giving the impression that it was somehow alive. "That's definitely not natural," Fisher muttered. "All systems green," Tom reported from his station aboard the Phoenix. "Ready when you are, Captain." Jack took his position in the command chair. The ship's interior was a strange mix of human and alien design, standard control panels alongside crystalline interfaces that responded to thought as much as touch. "Launch," he ordered. The bay doors opened, and the Phoenix glided out into space. The difference was immediately apparent. The hybrid ship moved with a grace and speed that no human vessel could match, the alien metals singing with power as they came fully alive for the first time in thousands of years. "Scout vessel detected," Lisa announced. "It's changing course, coming straight for us." "It's curious," Mike observed. "Probably never seen anything like us before." "Let's keep it that way," Jack said. "Bring weapons online but hold fire. Let's see what it does." The scout approached cautiously, circling the Phoenix at a distance. Scans washed over the ship, probing its defenses. "It's scanning us," Lisa reported, "trying to figure out what we are." And Jack asked. It's confused, she said with a hint of satisfaction. Our signature is part Ardani, part human. It doesn't know what to make of us. The scout suddenly darted forward, a beam of energy lancing out from one of its appendages. It struck the Phoenix's hull and something remarkable happened. Instead of causing damage, the energy seemed to flow into the metal, which glowed briefly before absorbing it completely. Hull integrity at 100%, Tom reported, amazed. The adaptive metals are working even better than we hoped. They're not just resisting the attack, they're getting stronger from it. Our turn, Jack said. Mike targeted their propulsion system, variable frequency just like we planned. Mike grinned and activated the weapons. The Phoenix fired not a simple beam or projectile, but a complex web of energy that shifted patterns constantly. The scout tried to evade, but the attack was too unpredictable. It struck home, shearing off several of the creature's limbs. The scout reeled, then turned and began to accelerate away. It's running, Mike announced, trying to escape. Not happening, Jack said grimly. All power to engines, don't let it send a signal. The Phoenix surged forward, closing the distance rapidly. The scout twisted and turned, dropping what appeared to be organic mines in their path. Tom navigated around them with surprising ease, the ship responding to his commands as if it were an extension of his thoughts. The Ardani designed their ships to form neural links with their pilots, Lisa explained, seeing his surprised expression. The systems are recognizing you as a compatible pilot. With a final burst of speed, the Phoenix caught up to the fleeing scout. Mike fired again, this time targeting what they believed to be the creature's central nervous system. The effect was immediate. The scout convulsed, its lights flickering before going completely dark. A target neutralized, Mike reported. Jack let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Scan it, make sure it didn't get a message out. Lisa ran the scans. No transmissions detected, we got it before it could report. A cheer went up among the crew. Their first test, their first victory, but Jack didn't join in the celebration. He was looking at the dead scout, thinking about what it represented. This was just a scout, he said quietly. The first, there will be more. Back at Outpost 7, Commander Fisher was already composing a message to Earth Command. This time they would have proof. This time they would have to listen. And the Phoenix would be ready, no longer just scrap metal, but the first of what might need to be many, a terrifying war machine born from the ashes of one civilization to protect another. As they towed the scouts' remains back to the station for study, Jack couldn't help but wonder. Had they done enough, and how much time did they have before the real invasion began? 2 months had passed since the encounter with the scout. Earth Command, finally convinced of the threat, had authorized full resources for the Phoenix project. Outpost 7 had been transformed from a remote research station into a bustling military installation. 3 more hybrid ships were under construction, each incorporating lessons learned from the original. Captain Jack stood at the viewport in his quarters, watching engineers in spacesuits working on the hull of the second ship, tentatively named Chimera. The Earth Defense Fleet had sent their best engineers, weapons specialists, and tactical officers to assist with the project. A chime at his door pulled Jack from his thoughts. Enter, he called. Lisa stepped inside, holding a data pad. Her eyes showed the fatigue they all felt, but there was excitement there too. We've finished analyzing the scout's remains, she said. You need to see this. She handed him the pad. Jack scrolled through the report, his expression growing more serious with each swipe. You sure about this? He asked. Lisa nodded. The scout was carrying a detailed map of human territory, not just major installations but minor outposts, colony worlds, even some civilian settlements. They've been watching us for years, Jack. Jack set the pad down, and the biological components. That's the really concerning part, Lisa said. The organic material shows human DNA markers. They've been harvesting us, studying how to integrate our biology with their technology. The implications were chilling. The swarm wasn't just coming to conquer, it was coming to consume. We need to, Jack began, but was interrupted by the station's alarm. Commander Fisher's voice came over the intercom. All personnel to battle stations, this is not a drill, Captain Jack to the command center immediately. Jack burst into the command center to find organized chaos. Officers were moving rapidly between stations, and the main screen showed a disturbing sight, multiple contacts appearing at the edge of the system. What are we looking at? Jack asked as he joined Fisher at the central console. 7 objects larger than the Scout, Fisher replied grimly. Appeared out of nowhere about 10 minutes ago. They're moving in formation toward the station. The swarm, Jack asked, though he already knew the answer. Fisher nodded. Has to be, nothing else moves like that. She pointed to the erratic, almost organic movement patterns on the screen. Jack studied the tactical display. Time to intercept. 3 hours, Fisher replied. We've sent an emergency message to Earth Command. Reinforcements are on the way, but the nearest battle group is 2 days out. Jack looked at her. We can't wait that long. I know, Fisher said. That's why the Phoenix is being prepped for launch. Your crew is already on board. Jack nodded. What about the other ships? Chimera is at 60% completion, not combat ready, Fisher replied. The others are still mostly framework. So it's just us, Jack said quietly. Fisher put a hand on his shoulder. The Phoenix handled 1 scout. This is 7 larger vessels. No one would blame you for staying to defend the station directly. Jack shook his head. If we let them get close, the station is finished. We need to hit them while they're still spread out before they can coordinate. Good luck, Captain, Fisher said. The future of humanity might depend on what happens in the next few hours. The Phoenix launched 30 minutes later, fully armed and with its most experienced crew. Tom at engineering, Lisa at systems, Mike at weapons, and a dozen others who had been with the project from the beginning. All systems operational, Tom reported from his station. The hull enhancements are working perfectly. Energy absorption capacity is at 130% of our previous maximum. Jack nodded. The Phoenix had been continually improved since its first battle. The alien metals had been further activated, increasing their adaptive properties. The weapon systems had been refined to create even more unpredictable attack patterns. Battle plan, Mike asked from the weapons console. We hit hard and keep moving, Jack replied. Their strength is in coordination. The Scouts' data showed they operate like a hive mind. If we can disrupt their formation, we may be able to take them one by one. The crew acknowledged the orders, and the Phoenix accelerated toward the incoming threat. On the view screen, the swarm vessels became visible. Each one a nightmarish blend of technology and organic matter, like massive insects made of metal and flesh. They've spotted us, Lisa reported. Changing formation, they're spreading out. Jack frowned. That wasn't the behavior they expected. The swarm was adapting already. They learned from the Scout, Mike said, voicing what they were all thinking. They know we're dangerous. Good, Jack replied. Then let's show them how dangerous we can be. Target the lead vessel, all weapons. The Phoenix surged forward, closing rapidly on the swarm formation. The lead vessel suddenly accelerated to meet them, multiple weapon ports opening along its hull. Evasive maneuvers, Jack ordered. Tom's hands flew over the controls and the Phoenix banked sharply just as the swarm vessel fired. Streams of energy lashed out, some missing entirely, others grazing the Phoenix's hull. Where they hit, the metal glowed and seemed to drink in the energy. Power levels rising, Tom reported excitedly. The hull is converting their attacks into usable energy just like we hoped. Return fire, Jack ordered. Mike activated the weapon systems. The Phoenix fired, not a single weapon but a coordinated barrage from multiple ports, each operating on different frequencies and patterns. The attack struck the swarm vessel from several angles, overwhelming its defenses. The effect was devastating. Parts of the creature's hull blackened and crumbled. It reeled back, trailing what looked disturbingly like ichor mixed with coolant fluid. Direct hit, Mike cheered. But there was no time to celebrate. The other 6 vessels were converging, moving with unnatural coordination. They're surrounding us, Lisa warned. Jack had expected this. Implement attack pattern Hydra. The crew moved with practiced efficiency. The Phoenix suddenly changed course, diving straight toward one of the flanking vessels while firing at 2 others. The sudden aggression seemed to confuse the swarm ships, creating a momentary gap in their formation. The Phoenix exploded through the gap, engines at maximum, then twisted into a tight loop that brought it behind the formation. 2 quick bursts crippled the engines of another swarm vessel before the others could react. 2 down, 5 to go, Jack said. But the remaining swarm vessels were learning. Adapting their tactics, they spread out further, making it impossible for the Phoenix to focus on just one. They began firing in overlapping patterns, forcing the human ship into increasingly desperate evasive maneuvers. Hull energy absorption at maximum, Tom warned. We can't take much more of this. A massive impact rocked the ship as one of the swarm beams found its mark. Alarms blared and several consoles erupted in sparks. Starboard weapons offline, Mike reported, and they're still coming. Jack gripped the arms of his command chair. The Phoenix was powerful, but it was still one ship against five. They needed something more. Lisa, he called, the Ardani records. Didn't they mention something about a resonance frequency that disrupted swarm communication? Lisa's eyes widened. Yes, but we never got it working. The frequency would have to be modulated in real time to match the swarm's current pattern. Can you do it? Jack asked. Lisa hesitated, then nodded. I'll need direct access to the main sensor array, and Tom will have to reroute power from weapons to the communication system. Do it, Jack ordered. As Tom and Lisa worked frantically, the Phoenix continued its desperate battle. Another hit shook the ship and the lights flickered. Shields at 30%, Tom reported. Whatever you're doing, do it fast. Almost there, Lisa called. Her fingers danced across her console, making adjustments as the data flowed in. Now. She activated the modified communications array. Nothing seemed to happen at first. No visible beam, no apparent effect. Then one by one, the swarm vessels began to falter. Their movements became erratic, their attacks uncoordinated. It's working, Mike exclaimed. They can't coordinate. All weapons target the nearest vessel, Jack ordered. The Phoenix fired its remaining weapons, focused on a single target. The swarm ship, unable to coordinate its defenses, took the full brunt of the attack. It broke apart in a spectacular explosion of metal and organic matter. The remaining swarm vessels began to retreat, moving away at maximum speed. Should we pursue? Mike asked. Jack shook his head. The Phoenix is too damaged and they're too fast, but this isn't over. They'll be back and with reinforcements. As they limped back to Outpost 7, the crew of the Phoenix knew they had won a battle. But the war was just beginning, and when the swarm returned in force, one ship, even one as powerful as the Phoenix, wouldn't be enough. They needed a fleet, and they needed it soon. 1 month after the battle at Outpost 7, Earth's orbital shipyards were operating at maximum capacity. The plans for the Phoenix had been distributed to every major manufacturing facility in human space. What had begun as a single ship built from alien scrap was now becoming a fleet. Jack stood on the observation deck of Earth Command Headquarters, watching as workers swarmed over the frame of a new hybrid vessel. 6 more were visible in nearby construction bays, in various stages of completion. Admiral Wilson joined him at the viewport. Their relationship had improved considerably since the Admiral had witnessed the battle recordings from Outpost 7. 23 ships completed so far, Wilson said. Another 42 under construction. We're converting every piece of compatible alien technology we can find. It won't be enough, Jack replied. The Phoenix crew had been analyzing the data from their encounters with the swarm. Our best estimates suggest their main fleet could number in the hundreds, possibly thousands. Wilson nodded grimly. I know, but we're doing something they don't expect. What's that? Jack asked. We're sharing. Wilson gestured to a group of non-human aliens working alongside human engineers. Every species in the Alliance has received the Phoenix specs. The Veron are building 15 ships, the Trell another 12. Even the Corinth have set aside their isolationist policies to contribute. Jack was surprised. The various alien species that made up the loose alliance of worlds had never truly unified before. Nothing brings people together like a common enemy, Wilson said, seeing his expression. Speaking of which, your ship is ready, the Phoenix Prime. Jack raised an eyebrow. Primes. Your original design worked so well we didn't want to mess with it too much, just enhanced everything. It's the flagship of the new fleet. An alert chimed on Wilson's communicator. His face darkened as he read the message. It's time, he said. Long-range outposts are reporting massive spatial distortions at the edge of Alliance space. The swarm is coming. The Phoenix Prime led a fleet of 30 hybrid vessels to the border of Alliance territory. Jack stood on the bridge, Tom, Lisa, and Mike at their stations as before, but now joined by officers from other Alliance species. A Veron weapons specialist named Krex stood at tactical, his scaled hands moving with surprising delicacy over the controls. A Trell scientist called Mare monitored the enhanced sensor array. Emergence point identified, Mary reported, her luminescent skin pulsing with light patterns that supplemented her speech. Spatial distortion growing, multiple signatures detected. How many? Jack asked. Mary hesitated, too many to count individually. The sensors are registering it as a single mass. The view screen showed what appeared to be a tear in space itself. Through the rift came the swarm, not ships in the conventional sense, but a writhing mass of organic mechanical entities that seemed to flow like liquid metal. As they watched, the mass began to separate into distinct vessels, hundreds of them, ranging from small scout-like craft to massive carrier entities. All ships battle formation Delta, Jack ordered. The fleet spread out into a three-dimensional array, each vessel positioned to support the others. The swarm didn't wait. A wave of smaller craft surged forward, moving with that disturbing organic fluidity. They're testing our defenses, Krex observed, his voice a low hiss. Looking for weaknesses. Let's show them we don't have any, Jack replied. All ships implement frequency rotation protocols, fire at will. The Alliance fleet fired as one, each ship using the variable frequency weapons developed from the Phoenix design. The effect was devastating. The first wave of swarm craft broke apart, unable to adapt to the constantly changing attack patterns. But the swarm learned quickly. The second wave came in a different formation, spreading wide to minimize the damage from any single attack. They fired back, strange pulsing energy beams that seemed to search for weaknesses in the Alliance ship's defenses. Hull absorption functioning at peak efficiency, Tom reported as a beam struck the Phoenix Prime. Power levels actually increasing with each hit. This was the genius of the hybrid design. The more the swarm attacked, the stronger the ships became, the alien metals drinking in the energy, converting it to power the ship systems. But the swarm kept coming, wave after wave. For every 10 they destroyed, another 50 seemed to emerge from the spatial rift. The Alliance fleet began to suffer losses. Two of the smaller hybrid vessels were overwhelmed by concentrated fire, their hulls finally giving way after absorbing more energy than they could handle. We can't keep this up forever, Mike warned. They're adapting to our frequency patterns faster than we can change them. Jack had anticipated this. Lisa, activate the resonance protocol. Lisa nodded and began the sequence they had prepared. Every ship in the Alliance fleet suddenly shifted its communications to broadcast on the same modulating frequency they had discovered during the battle at Outpost 7, the one that disrupted the swarm's hive-mind coordination. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The swarm vessels nearest to the fleet began to move erratically, some colliding with each other, others firing in random directions. Push forward, Jack ordered. Target the largest carrier entities while they're disorganized. The Alliance fleet surged forward, concentrating fire on the massive swarm carriers. 3 of the enormous entities were destroyed in quick succession, breaking apart into clouds of debris that drifted into neighboring swarm vessels, causing further chaos. It's working, Mike exclaimed. But the victory was short-lived. The remaining swarm vessels began to pull back, retreating toward the spatial rift. As they did, the rift itself began to fluctuate, growing unstable. They're closing the rift, Mary reported, alarm in her voice. If they escape, they'll adapt to our tactics and return stronger, Jack finished. We can't let that happen. He opened a channel to the entire fleet. All vessels, maximum thrust, we need to collapse that rift before they can retreat. The Alliance fleet accelerated, pursuing the retreating swarm. The Phoenix Prime led the charge, pushing its engines beyond safe limits. Jack knew they would only get one chance at this. Lisa, configure all weapons to target these coordinates, he said, sending the data to her station. That's the focal point of the rift. If we hit it with enough energy all at once, it might collapse. And trap them on this side, Lisa finished, quickly making the adjustments. All ships are synchronized, ready on your command. Jack took a deep breath. Fire. Every ship in the Alliance fleet fired simultaneously, their weapons converging on a single point at the center of the spatial rift. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the rift began to contort, its edges twisting inward. A shockwave of energy burst outward, catching the retreating swarm vessels and shattering them. The rift collapsed with a final surge of energy that rocked even the distant Alliance ships. Where it had been, there was now only empty space, littered with the broken remains of the swarm. Did we get them all? Tom asked, checking his sensors. No, Mary replied. Approximately 30% of the swarm force made it through before the collapse, but their main carrier entities were destroyed. The bridge was silent as the implications sank in. They had won an important victory, but the swarm was still out there. This wasn't the end, just the beginning of a longer conflict. Admiral Wilson's voice came over the comm system. "Good work, Phoenix Prime. The Alliance Council is convening an emergency session. This victory has given us breathing room, but we need to prepare for when they return." Jack looked around at his crew, human and alien together, working in perfect coordination. He thought about the journey that had brought them here. From a piece of alien scrap floating in deep space to the creation of the most powerful fleet the Alliance had ever seen. "We'll be ready," he said both to Wilson and to his crew. "The Phoenix rose from ashes once. If necessary, it can do so again." As the Alliance fleet turned for home, carrying news of their victory, Jack stared at the empty space where the rift had been. The swarm would return. That was certain. But they would face a humanity that had transformed itself, just as it had transformed that piece of scrap metal into something the enemy had never expected. A terrifying war machine built not just with technology, but with the unique human gifts of adaptation, innovation, and determination. And next time, the swarm would face not just one phoenix, but a fleet of them, each one carrying the fire of humanity's refusal to be consumed.